After 11 engaging shows, Julie and Peter take a moment to reflect on the journey of the Real Recovery podcast. Today, they're coming to you from the serene setting of Peter's patio, surrounded by the soothing sounds of wind chimes and a babbling pond. It's the perfect backdrop for a heartfelt discussion about the podcast's growth, challenges, and the exciting road ahead. Stay tuned as they dive into what has been accomplished and what's to come, sharing their personal insights and revelations along the way.
Hi, this is Julie from Peter's Patio.
Yeah, on the patio at Peter's house, Real Recovery Podcast.
We're doing a check-in, and we want to talk about where we started, where we are now, where we're going. Peter and I's brain are exploding with so many things. So we wanted to do a check-in with you from Peter's Patio, which is beautiful. And you might hear angels when the chimes go. And there's also a pond with running water. So if you hear that, don't adjust your phone.
Yeah, no need to adjust your settings.
So I was professional today.
Oh.
And I actually wrote down questions.
Oh, for this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
to check in with you.
Normally it's, I can't get this to work on my phone and I can't get this to do on my computer.
And Peter's such a technical genius.
There it is.
That he got new mics. And let me tell you, this mic is right by my head now. And if I told you what it really looks like, it would be pornographic.
We do have an explicit tag, but that might be pushing it.
Usually for us swearing or somebody else swearing. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the first question. And then...
You're so prepared. I didn't prepare anything.
You know me, I usually bring a Post-it, or I have a Post-it for you. That's my professional documentation, a pink Post-it. So I'm going to start with, what has this podcast meant to you so far?
Oh, it has been so exciting. Let's see, we're 10 episodes in, but we've actually recorded, I think 14, 15 maybe. And it's been just to go in 3 months to having 10 episodes up, a full on website, creating the graphics. We do everything ourselves. So there's no outside.
Peter's so
source.
lying right now. Peter does all of that.
I'm being kind. No, you do. Okay. So here's where it sits. We have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. I know my weaknesses and I know my strengths mostly. And to have Julie as a partner in this is fantastic. I think about it all the time because there's so many things that she takes care of, and with her strengths and personality and all that she brings to the table, it's everything that I'm lacking. And
I'm not very technical.
When you say everything, I take care of all of the technical stuff, which you might see, but Julie does all the behind the scenes, like getting people scheduled, reaching out to people, talking people up off air to get them excited about being on the podcast.
Cooking for our business meetings.
Cooking for the business meetings. Fantastic salads. I'm eating so much better than I did.
I eat better when I'm with you too. So
yeah, none of that fast food. Oh, I got to get something quick. But so it's been an incredible journey. Yes, a lot of anxiety. Part of that's because in recovery, a lot of us tend to have that anxiety from our drinking days, I think. And it's a condition a lot of people have who are addicts. But yeah, and a little bit of worry, although I'm overcoming that. I use meditation to calm my brain, and that's helped a lot with worrying because I like to future trip, and sometimes it's the good ones are, we're going to be famous and we're going to be on the red carpet someday. And no, but Oprah, all of it. Right. But then there's the future tripping that it's never going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to listen. This is just a wasted effort. And so I have to combat that because my brain, I have that committee, and we talk about that a lot with a lot of our guests. Yeah. And so that can get in the way if you don't know how to manage it and control it. And so I do it to the best of my abilities. But overall, this has been such a wonderful experience. One thing is I get to do what I love, which is the geek side. So I love to do the editing. I love creating the graphics. I love putting the posts together. All of that, just, I don't know why, but it's my jam. I love it. And then, but the other side of it is when we talk to our guests, interviewing these people and getting to hear their stories, see their vulnerability, and then where they are today and how they've come through it, to see some of the challenges, sometimes it's just a little thing that will send them off and back out to do more research. And sometimes it's relatable. I think, oh yeah, easily that could be me. So overall, yeah, it's been amazing, absolutely amazing. And I do a future trip in a positive way that we will continue this, and 5-10 years down the road, we'll be looking back and just, I don't know.
So I'll give you my thoughts on it.
Yes. Enough about me.
So
what do you think about me?
So you are the yin to my, I don't want to say the word literally, but you are in so many ways, where I'm not nervous about the podcast at all. I'm always telling you, it'll be just fine. Don't worry about it. It's all going to work out. I have anxiety when it comes to work. And I have diagnosed anxiety disorder. And we've been talking about it lately. I just got diagnosed with a thyroid condition, and it went from hypo to hyper, and so did my brain. And they switched around the medications. So I understand anxiety, but from a different way. The podcast actually oozes everything. And I think the best part of the podcast for me, other than our friendship, like we can talk about anything,
yeah,
which is amazing. And if we weren't family before, we really are even more. But I've known these people where you get to meet them, and in some of them you've known, but hearing their story, not in the 10-minute version, has been the best thing for me. We've heard so many different stories, from bipolar to meth to alcohol to heroin and we're all just the same in recovery. So we even had someone who dated somebody that was a sex addict. So it has been life-changing in that way. And
food addiction. That was another one.
Just so many different ones. We've heard from gay people, straight people, men, women. It's been amazing.
Yeah, the diversity of the people that we've been able to get on the show has been incredible. And it's, in some ways, I feel diversity shouldn't be the thing. We should all be equal. But in today's world, that's how it is. Everybody wants to put everybody in a little box. But yeah, incredible people from so many different backgrounds. And often I ask people about their upbringing and their growing up, their youth, because to me that it's fascinating to me to hear how some people have come from what you would say is the perfect American suburbia dream life, right? White picket fence, little puppy dog in the yard. And then there's people who have had, like Colette, if you listen to her story, where she came from and growing up in an abusive family. And so it can hit everybody. This disease is just so non-discriminatory, and you may think you're in the best, wonderful place, and then boom, you get it hits you. It grabs hold of you. So that's been really fascinating to me to learn that about different people. I'm curious, when we started this podcast, one of the first things we decided was, with us being hosts, we had to be very open and honest with our own stories. And so we did, unless it was something I'd forgotten which I think over the episodes, I pretty much brought up everything I forgot to say in my story. But other than that, we didn't hold back, and you didn't hold back. And so how has that been for you now that we've released those, people have listened to them? I'm curious what your take is on that. Have you had feedback? We were both had a lot of anxiety over that. We both said the same thing. It's like stripping down naked in front of an audience of people. And I almost felt like I would rather do that than share my whole life story.
For me, sharing my whole life story publicly, that's some anxiety right there. The podcast, is not anxiety, but sharing it with being a professional and my career was a lot for me. But since I went to IOP, which is intensive outpatient for stress management, I've tried so hard this last 2 years to be proud of where I've come from, not embarrassed. Some significant anniversaries coming up this year, and being open like that and not in our safe meeting was different for me.
Yeah.
And I've been to a lot of meetings. I've been to 5 meetings this week. So it was different. And I feel fully exposed. I told you I saw somebody from my high school, and we just had our 40th reunion. Don't do the math. But when he said he had listened to the podcast, I did feel naked in front of him. And he said, you just never know what someone else goes through. And we see people, some of our guests, when they have it all together, and you could never imagine their past.
Yeah.
And you can't judge a book by its cover because you could never know mine. I don't look like I came from prison. I definitely don't look like an IV drug user with my little chunky butt. So that was the hardest part of it. And to be willing to be accepting of the consequences, good, bad, indifferent. And to touch on something you said, hoping that it touched some lives, I'm absolutely positive. I have people tell me all the time.
Right.
We just had a guy here for Roger's birthday who has 22 days sober and listens to our podcast working out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And he says it keeps him comfort. I know that Colette's story has been, and Colette's part of our board of directors, and shout out to Colette because her being vulnerable has touched so many people and probably a whole treatment center as well. Who's opened their hearts to us.
Yeah. Yeah. She is such a strong soul.
Resilient.
And such a asset to our show and being on the board. And we're she's
an asset to recovery.
Yeah. A working board. That's what who are, and to explain a little bit about that, what we're doing right now is we're in the process of getting our nonprofit status in the state of Oregon. We've submitted all the paperwork for that. And in order to do that, you have what's called a working board. You need a minimum of 3 people. And so Julie, myself, and Colette are the initial working board for our show. And then the next step will be to apply for our 501c3 through the IRS. And then once we have that, then I think we will expand to a 5-person board. And so it'll be fun to see who we pull in to be a part of that.
That would be cool.
But to have someone like Colette join us and support us and be a part of this, how strong out of the gate can we be? What a strong...
Well, the 3 of us at North Coast Roundup launching the show.
Oh, yeah.
That was a huge thing for me. I don't like to travel. I don't sleep well in strange places, to say the least. And I traveled successfully with Colette. Peter was with his husband in his trailer, but it was a big step for me to go down there. And the convention was not scary to me at all, but
I was nervous because I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been there. And we are going to have a round table with some of the others that were with us out there. But yeah, we were able to it was in Seaside, and we have what do you call it? It's like a timeshare thing, but it's with campgrounds. It's called 1,000 Trails. So we were able to bring our trailer out there and camp.
And his dog.
And the dog and everything. It's like a house on wheels. And then meet up with everybody. And it was the first time I'd been a part of that type of an event. And also trying to represent the show. And it was like, will they get mad if I hand out flyers to people or cards, or do we record from the event? I had so many unknowns. And for me, I like to have everything known ahead of time. I hate going into unknown situations. I'm getting better at it, but it's something that I have to work on because I don't have the booze to get me through that anymore. So it's just always, the anxiety is always at a high level for that. So it was good growing. It was a good growing experience personally. And it was a great way to launch our show. I think not that we got a tremendous amount of listeners, but people got to know and see who we are. And I think over time, that's really going to be beneficial.
And I really want Colette's brother on the show.
Oh, yeah. He was great. We went to dinner with him and he's got 11 years.
11 years. And him and Peter share a birthday.
Yeah. Just 2 days apart. Both Aries. Yes.
And talk about different parts of this, of society, right? But the same mission and the same goal.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I got another question. I love interviewing you.
See, that's why she's good with me, because she's a great interviewer. I may not be so much.
Do you know how many people I've interviewed for employment? Oh my. So what has been your personal favorite show?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because so many of them.
And they're different.
Yeah, they're so different. And one that comes to mind is one that hasn't been put out yet. So stay tuned, listen for it. But we went out to Another Chance and talked to Jonah, and his story was, I think what hit home for me is in our city right now, currently.
Number one in addiction, 50th in treatment centers available.
And there's so many people on the streets in their little tents, or sometimes they just have a sleeping bag, or sometimes they're just lying there. And I've seen a lot of people just passed out. I don't even know if we're driving by, so you don't know if they're alive or dead, or if should we call 911, but it's so prevalent that it's almost like it almost becomes a norm in a way. And so to hear someone who was one of those people and what they went through and the madness of the addiction and how it made him think people were after him, and how he felt like almost like a caged animal if he went into any treatment type situation or even an emergency room, and how he wanted to escape and run out to the woods, and just all he could think of was, I got to get that fix and disappear. And that really hit home for me because it's easy, like I said, to see these people on the streets in that condition that he was in and just turn a blind eye. There they are. That's them. And one of the things that I think is so important, and something that we really need to work on in this state and in this city, is getting the mental health care and treatment for those individuals that are suffering.
Dual diagnosis.
Yeah. And he was such a great example of that. And here he is, sober, drug-free, and appreciating the smallest things. I could wash a pair of pants because I have two. How many of us think that's laundry's like, oh, I got laundry to do. He was so excited because he had laundry to do
for him.
So I think that really, that's one that really hit home for me. How about you?
So that one was really impacting. I was grateful for my shoelaces when we left, and knowing him, I've gotten to know him. So again, just a miracle. But part of his story, didn't know this until that night, was talking about Colette staying with him the first weekend, getting him to treatment. And that, to me, her meeting is called Beginners Are Winners.
Right.
And I would say for the first, until Colette came in the program, I did not feel overwhelmingly comfortable to hang out with the newcomers. I had some rules, some boundaries. I don't go around anyone who's using narcotics at all. Seeing Colette come in the first night to the meeting and count 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, I got on that journey with her and had a restart myself. So between her story and then hearing her being a part of his story, I would say Colette has to be my favorite story, though they're close. Yeah.
Hers was really powerful. Really
especially powerful. For me, just acknowledging the molestation after 56 years, and I won't cry. Luckily, I'm past that. where I used to have a breakdown, I can really relate. And she has overcome so much that I've just started on the journey to do. So I really relate. And then we went to the same clubs, the City
Right.
Night Club, the 927 Club. And that, it really resonates to me. And I know, even though I've never known her until AA, we were hanging out in the same places, just missing each other by a year. So
I think favorite is maybe not the right word because they're all so
most impacting. How's that?
Yeah, because everybody's story has touched me in a certain way. Some
Every
deeper,
single
maybe
one.
and it's just because my story resonates with their stories. But yeah, I would say that for me, Colette's was and Rogers and Ben. There's so many that
Izzy brought a whole different aspect because he brought GTD, and that was again one of my favorites, like you said. But every single one of them has something different.
Yeah,
and I feel so connected to each and every one of them.
Exactly.
I think for me, and I don't think favorite is the right word, to be honest with you. I just think that seeing that story and seeing her come into recovery where Roger was already in recovery. And because of Colette, I got to know Marty. And because of Colette and Marty, I got to know Manolo. It opened up my world in a different way. So it really was impacting that way. And then her unselfishness to the newcomer, I think that has really resided with me.
I love, speaking of Colette, she has that, just tell me when and where and I'll be there. And I love that because I've said that before, whenever that a hand has reached out to, I want AA to be there too. And that's not just AA. I want the help to be there no matter what. And to have that kind of attitude. Okay, I'll be there. Just tell me when and where.
And I think Izzy and GTD have been really helpful to us in a different way. So that has been amazing. And I didn't know the stories behind Connor, Greg, and TJ. And then thank God for Chris, and then them introducing us to Mike, who we're going to have on the show in just a few weeks.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing.
I was worried that I'd sound like a fanboy because I talked a lot about Izzy because he is inspiring to me. I see where he went through and where he came from, and you can listen to his story to get that backstory. But to have him now flourish and be head of a nonprofit, and this is over a course of 3 or so years.
Since 2019.
2019. Okay, so a little more than 3 years.
That truly was his sponsor at the time. And to watch the whole thing unveil, like he was working a job at that time. So to see where it started and where it's gone and now how many people's he touched.
Yeah.
When
I think 3 years is when he started the nonprofit, but before that, he started going out.
Started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what he embodies for me that I want to emulate is taking chances on people. And because all his staff or most of his staff are former graduates of recovery or of the treatment centers. I don't think you graduate from recovery, but and that could be debated on future episodes. But
don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, semantics. And then giving back to the community, which I don't know if we'll ever get there in that regard, but what he's doing with the scholarship programs and being able to give people clothing so they can go out and interview, household goods so they can
I'm gonna argue
have a
with
place
you.
to live.
We've already given back because we post the link to GTD,
True,
which opens that up. We post the link to Another Chance. So if you need another chance, it's there. We are going to True Colors. We post the link for True Colors. So I believe we've already given back by people that wouldn't necessarily know about GTD because they're not in a treatment center or part of our community, get to hear about it and get to know them. I think, another chance is a small building. So I'm going to argue with you on
I have
that.
lofty goals. So
There's goals, but I think
I'm modest. I
think we've been giving back since day one. I think exposing ourselves. I think we're like AA. We're self-supporting through our own contributions.
That's right. Which, speaking of, no, I got to put my pitch in. No, I'll save it for the end.
I don't pitch. So there you go. Okay, I got another question for you. I actually really did my homework. Aren't you proud of me?
I am so proud because I have nothing.
It's okay. You're going good with the questions, and it's a beautiful day out, and he's going to feed me after. So it's a win. What have you learned so far, whether it's about being a podcaster, about recovery, about you? What have you learned? You can answer from any direction.
Oh, my goodness. I'm growing. So
Love that.
I don't know if I've learned everything, but I'm learning every step of the way. And I'm learning how, when I got into this, or when we started this podcast, prior to this, I have a lot of experience. I managed studios and I did shows and podcasts for other clients of mine. And so I was versed in the process and everything, but to do it for yourself, to have that personal perspective, as opposed to I'm doing this for somebody else and I'm not as invested, right? And this, for me, I'm so invested in that what I've had to learn and what I'm learning is time management. Because this is a passion, I can sit and do and not take breaks, and I can get so involved in it because I'm just so passionate. I want to make this happen. And so I think being able to take a step back, and I use meditation for that too, to put a plan in place or like a schedule in place, so that I'm not up till 2 a.m. because I'm just passionate and I'm just go, but just say, no, I need to go to bed. I need this rest. I need to stop. I need to eat. I need to take these breaks. So I guess that's one of the main things that I'm learning, because I'm still trying to manage all that. And I think the exposure to all of the people, when I first got sober, I was in a club, and I just went mainly to that club. I went to a few other meetings, but I was very much in a smaller world. And by moving to the group that I'm in now, and then doing this podcast, which is expanding me to, I didn't really, because I'm an alcoholic, booze was my drug of choice. I didn't know much or understand much about other forms of drug use and addiction, and food addiction and gambling addiction. And I've met all of those, not just through the podcast, but through my time since I have been in it's through the podcast too. It's going out and interviewing in treatment centers and talking to people who have other addictions. So that for me has been a really good learning experience. And I'm continuing. I also am learning here's the biggest one for me that I'm working on. And it's not easy, and it's a continual thing. And I've just nipped the tip of the iceberg, and that's patience. And this is throughout all aspects of my life. I'm a gardener, and you have to have patience when you're growing plants. You got to plant the seed, and it takes time, and maybe that seed won't germinate. And so you got to start all over. Patience. I want us to have 100,000 listeners now. Okay, that's not going to happen, Peter. You've got to be patient. We've only been doing this for 3 months, and yet I'm comparing myself to people who've been doing this for 3 years. So patience is probably the biggest thing that I'm learning and working on in regards to my life and this podcast. How about you? I'm just going to throw the questions you ask me right back. So
I appreciate that, because they're good questions. I am a control freak. And what I mean by that is, if I go somewhere, I drive so I can get out whenever I want.
We're so much alike, by the way.
I plan everything to infinite as well. I am extremely organized. Please don't fold my towels wrong. And I mean that, which is why I fold them. But what I've learned is doing something different going to North Coast Roundup to make a new memory. For those of you who didn't know, that North Coast Roundup weekend was a suggestion of Colette because it's the same weekend or the same date I got sentenced to prison. And every time when she announces it, I'll be like, here she goes again. And she said, let's make a new memory. And we did.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And I never would have thought a year ago, we're getting ready to celebrate Father's Day. And it was on Father's Day. And I almost said that word literally. But it was on Father's Day when we had talked about doing a podcast. And I said, oh, I would love that. We could be Regis and Kathy Lee. And here we are, Peter and Julie.
Yes.
P&J. So getting out of my comfort zone, going to another chance, which is not my average place to go for a meeting, has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Getting to know people in a different way has been wonderful. And I think we've been very vulnerable. And I think through that comes growth and the other thing is that when we're doing this, believe it or not, I have no anxiety.
That's
so
awesome.
The anxiety that I experience, which can bring me to tears at this moment in my employment, I do not experience during this, which to me says it's the right thing for me.
Yeah.
So
I've worked really hard. You mentioned beautiful backyard, and I've got bamboo and a
beautiful.
theme and my house. It's all because I wanted to have an oasis to escape. It's how it was to escape. It made me feel calm, and I could get out of the craziness of my life, I thought anyway. And this is a much, much better way to do it, to have a place where I feel grounded, and it's my oasis where I can be calm and not have anxiety. And yeah, I'll have anxiety with the podcast because, I'm trying to keep a deadline. I'm making all my own anxiety, by the way. I'm making the deadlines that I have to keep. I'm making me do this and that and the other thing.
And I say, it's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Yeah. So it's worked out really well, actually.
Okay, last question. On my hot pink Post-it. I really wish you could see it. It matches my fresh pedicure. It'll be a two-parter. Just a one-parter. What do you want to see on the horizon?
The future. Yeah.
Without future tripping. But what would it be other than we're going to Oprah and Kelly Clarkson's show?
Is Oprah still a thing, though, or is she passé
She's
now?
always a thing. Please.
Yeah, not to future trip. But one of the things I do in my meditations is called creative visualization. And it was, I believe her name is Shanti Gawain, who wrote the books and also does some good meditations. And she's from, I think, the 80s when she peaked. There's probably others out there since her.
We peaked in the 80s too.
That's right. But one of the things her process is visualizing where you want to be or what you want to have or anything in your life, all through visualizing it. And she takes it to the extent of you can put "I will be great" on a Post-it note and stick it on your mirror so you see it every day and you're reminded every day, just like that hot pink Post-it note. She'll drawing it out, putting yourself in the picture in your mind of you going through whatever it is. It's a new car. So you imagine yourself driving that new car. And so for me, I do that with this show. I imagine our future. I imagine us winning a Freedom Award. Okay, so there you go.
I imagine us getting T-shirts to hand out.
There you go. All of these things. So when I look ahead, I see us being available to our community. I really hope that we get some feedback from someone who says, "Gosh, I listened to your show and it got me off the whatever insert addiction of choice and into a program, and my life has changed." That would be like the ultimate. But for us to have a good reach of listeners, I'd love us to be nationwide, maybe worldwide. Okay, see, I have lofty goals. And to be...
YouTube goes everywhere.
There you go.
Just saying.
Yeah. and podcasts go everywhere. And so I see us being very successful in the future and feeling, in a way, I don't know if this is really being out there, but being a mouthpiece for our community here, and maybe we'll expand across the country and across the world. I do have smaller visions of immediate future. So like getting t-shirts so we can hand, I'd love to be able to give back to the guests that we've had on our show with a real recovery mug or a t-shirt or a hat in a small, very small appreciation for what they've done for us by being on our show. And at the end of the day, I could be getting an Oscar, right?
Wow.
But at the end of the day, really, if we can help one person, that to me is a success in itself. And if we can multiply that and help another person and just keep adding to that, and maybe our future is we've helped 1,000 people or 10,000 people, that would be fantastic.
For me, going to meetings a lot, because for me, when I go to work and I am overwhelmed, I go to a meeting and I'm calm by the end of the meeting. I go from a 15 to a 2. I've heard from several people that the podcast has already helped them and they were new in recovery. So I'm pretty confident that's already happening and it can only grow. For me, I think differently. For me, what I would like in the future is to feel how I feel when we're doing the podcast all of the time.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect. Sometimes I'm really emotional listening to the stories and it brings me to tears, but they're good tears. And they're like great tears because I've seen this recovery. And for me, I told you this in the beginning, and it's probably because I work, but for me, this is a different way of service. It gives me a different purpose. And for me, I have to put my sobriety dead first because of my brain. A lot of people, someone said it the other day in a meeting, and I think it was John C., whose story's coming out next.
Mm-hmm. It'll probably be out by the time this goes out, but yes.
Amen. But John C. said, we come here for the drinking. We stay because of our thinking. And I don't have the urge to stick a needle in my arm, meet you at the bar, any of those things. Luckily, that was removed around the 4th year. But my brain has addictive thinking. And if I could just be in this state like we are on your patio, which is beautiful, I got the water and the bamboo. But if I could stay like this in my brain for the future, that would be a huge win for me. Recovery does that to me. AA does that for me. Going to Another Chance does that for me.
Yeah.
When I go with Izzy to the treatment center with GTD, my soul is so full when I leave because I can get up at 9 o'clock. Peter and I are so different. Again, I get up at 5 a.m. without an alarm. Peter, like 5 a.m. is like a prison sentence to him. And staying
that's like the middle of the night.
And staying up past 10 is like a death sentence for me. I need my beauty sleep. So
yeah, I'm a night owl. And I do a lot of my work between 7 and 10 at night.
And the things that I accomplish before Peter gets out of bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've been paired with people who are opposite in that way often. Like one of my mentors and old boss, Carter, he'd send me texts. I'd get up in the morning and there'd be all these texts from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. And then I would do all this stuff and he would get it later at night because I was busy at night. So he'd wake up and see all my stuff that I'd done overnight. And it's fun. It works out. It really did.
No, I agree with you. And I think what we do more than anything is a community service.
Yeah.
Getting the word out. So
yeah. And really, I said, I threw out a lot of lofty goals.
I love it.
At the end of the day, if I can just do this and I don't need anything fancy, I just need to live. I want to be able to pay my bills and live my life and do this. This is
We
God,
always talk about we have enough.
We do.
So even though you can dream big, it's not really about the money.
No, it's not.
It's
I want to be able to do this, and money in this country that we live in is how we do these things. But if I can raise funds to give back to the community, like Izzy's doing now, giving back with clothing to the people who need it, or housing to the people who are coming out of treatment centers, or whatever it is, sponsoring people so they can go to these roundups, which those of you who don't know what a roundup is, it's a gathering. It's like a conference. I think it was originally just an AA conference, and then it's been expanded. I don't know exactly the history of why it's called a roundup, but that's what it is. It's a convention.
because they round people up.
I guess that's how it is.
And I'm going to contradict you again. You are helping raise money for Dress for Success by publishing Izzy's story, right?
True.
And
his group, what's the GTD
I think
story
some of
he
these
had.
things already achieving. And I think by presenting another chance, we're helping somebody get into treatment.
And the future, we're going to go to Fora, which was formerly DePaul Treatment Center. It's now called Fora Treatment Center. We've been at Another Chance. There's a couple of other ones
Going to
coming
True
up.
Colors.
True Colors is coming
Then
up.
we're trying to hit 4D.
So if we can bring up the awareness of those institutions, that's going to be a great help
And
to
here's the
our
thing.
community.
Practice your patience, because it's only been, and I'm going to use my word literally, 3.5 months.
Yes.
Can you imagine in a year?
That's what my vision, my creative visualization is.
I'm going to go to the peace and the tranquility. Thanks for having me over today.
Yeah, and I think this is fun. What I want to ask the listeners is to let us know what you think of our shows so far. Like we said, we just had our 10th episode as we're recording this. I just finished editing and we'll be pushing out. This is a Wednesday, so Friday will be our 11th episode. And I'd like to know, give us some feedback on what you think of these shows.
Positive feedback.
No, I'll take it all. I like constructive criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Where I can improve, where we can improve, maybe ideas of what you'd like to hear on future shows. And if you like what we do and our stories resonate with you, if you want to give us a review on Apple or Spotify or any of the other
boosts
networks,
our podcast.
it really helps us. Go to our site. We have links there for everything that we're doing. Yeah. So listen.realrecoverypodcast.com is where you can find our show on Spotify, but it's on all the other platforms. That's that's who hosts our show. And then if you go to support.realrecoverypodcast.com, see the theme here, you can support us. We just got a feature called monetization. So people can, for as little as 99 cents a month, they can offer support for our show. And we are going for our nonprofit status. So all of that potentially will be tax write-offs. So you can think of it that way. And we have merch for sale at merch.realrecoverypodcast.com, or you can just go to our website and click on the merch link. And we have t-shirts, and I'm going to be expanding it to a lot more, but we right now have t-shirts and mugs and sweatshirts, hoodies.
We don't have the bucket hat yet.
Not yet, but we're working on it. And what else?
I don't know. That's a whole lot there.
Yeah, just visit our website. You can see all that we're doing there. And it's a work in progress, but again, patience, Peter.
And it is progress, not perfection.
Progress.
We can always grow.
That's like my mantra.
Thank God that is the rule, because otherwise I'd be kicked out a long time ago. I'm really excited to celebrate some things with you this year. So
Me too. We have, I think, at least 5 more shows that we've already recorded. So every Friday is our schedule, and we're going to do these one-offs or these check-ins. And I think the next one hopefully will be a roundtable, because before we forget, we want to revisit North Coast Roundup and what we found there. There was some really incredible meetings we went to.
And hopefully get Raleigh to come on our show.
Oh, yeah. That's Colette's brother. And yeah, some of these meetings where people were coming from these small towns that don't have any resources, and it's very conservative, and to see them
Portland's lucky.
blossoming in these meetings was incredible. So we'll talk all about that on the Real Recovery Podcast.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.